Well, it was Don's idea, Pastor Don's idea for the ball and chain part 2. Well, we can go a lot of directions when we got one of these. And I didn't want to waste 2 hours in my shop building this thing and going on Marketplace to find this bowling ball for $10 and having to go drive over there. So by the time it's all done, I thought I got more time in this thing than it's worth. So I get to use it twice, okay? That sort of makes it worth the effort. Anyways, quick review. Last week we talked about regret, how it is a ball and chain to your future. Because we do things in our life, and you can't undo those things, and that's what I want to talk about more today. You can't undo. You can't have mulligans. We all know what the game of golf is like. Yeah, okay, if you don't know the rules. There's something, when you're amongst friends, you come up and say, how about we each have 2 mulligans or 5 mulligans? And what a mulligan is, if you do a bad, I got to do better than that. There we go. Anyways, if you have a really bad shot, you say, I'm claiming one of my mulligans. I mean, that's not part of the real rules, but amongst friends, you can do that. And then, of course, when I've played in charity golf tournaments at times, you can buy mulligans, because it's all about fundraising. So you can buy 20, 30 mulligans. And so you pay quite a lot of money to get these mulligans. Of course, it all goes to charity. And then, so if you have a bad shot, no problem. I'll take a mulligan, you turn it in basically, and you take another shot. Life doesn't offer that. So you can't relive anything you've done. You can't undo something. You can't have redos. I know that's probably not a word. It's a compound of some sort. But you can't have redos in life. And so consequently, we are stuck with regret for the things that we've done. And like I said last week, sometimes it's things you did, you have regret for, but sometimes it's things you didn't do. So you're kind of cursed if you do and cursed if you don't. Regret is one of those things. And guess what? The devil uses regret heavily to distract you from joy in life. He's the consummate bully. I think I mentioned that last week. He leads you to do something wrong, then turns around and accuses you for doing it. That's the consummate bully, is somebody who leads you to do it and then saying, now thinks on you. Because he stands before God both day and night accusing his brothers. So where do I want to go now? So I was thinking about that. I want to start with a story that happened to a friend of mine, and I'll turn that into a metaphor, so don't panic that I'm derailed myself, which I do a lot. That's why I rely on my wife a lot. I go on rabbit chases, and then I don't know how to get back to where I left off or where I was before. So she's always having to pay extra attention as to where I left the main path and went on a rabbit chase, because then I don't remember how to get back. Yeah, she's lost a lot of the times too. She goes on the rabbit chase. Anyway, so a friend of mine, a real adventure seeker. I don't know if anybody ever heard of Kent Danielson. Anyways, a buddy of mine grew up in Bella Coola, British Columbia, a real adventurous type guy. And his dad was a dentist in Bella Coola, and he's the one who, if some of you remember, ran this boat that would run up and down the coast doing dental work. His dad did. So he didn't want to go through all the university getting a dental degree, so he took I think it was a 2-year course you can take that allows you to be above the 54th parallel. So 49th is the border over here. 54th is the way up. So you can practice dentistry above the 54th. I guess it's like, okay, you don't have any dentists anyway, so might as well have somebody who's had 2 years of training to pull teeth and do whatever they do. Plus, his dad was a dentist, so he could always get some consultation. Anyway, so he did that. But he's always, and so I would fly to Bella Coola once in a while. My dad would take his airplane and fly me to Bella Coola and dump me off and pick me up a few days later. And we'd do these ventures, hiking and all sorts of stuff, looking at old hieroglyphs and different things. But anyways, he decided one time that he wanted to go to run the Nahanni River in a canoe. Now, the Nahanni River and the Liard Rivers are up in the Yukon. And it's the most remote park in all of North America is the Nahanni National Park. And that's my kind of thing too. Like, when we talk about vacations, my wife said, oh, Hawaii or something like that, which I'm stubborn enough to not go there. But anyhow, my idea is let's board a bush plane and go out somewhere in the bush and live it up. It's more of a men bonding thing. But anyways, the Nahanni Valley, and I've looked it up here, it's called the Headless Valley. Okay, so that's kind of like the Bermuda Triangle type thing. Also, there's Dead Man's Creek there in the Nahanni Valley, and there's Tombstone Range. I looked these things up just because I remember there was some real mystique. So when he decided he's going to take a buddy and they're going to have a bush plane fly him 300 miles up the Nahanni River and dump him off, and then canoe down, both of which guys they're not real canoeists. And so they bought one of these tarps that cover the whole canoe, so when water comes over, at least it doesn't go in, but you still got to stay vertical. So anyways, so they take this bush plane, they tie it to the wing of the airplane, they fly this canoe up there, and this is before cell phones. This happened a long time ago. So I got his whole story back then because I just was so fascinated, so I had him write it all out point blank, points. Anyway, so they fly up 300 miles. No cell phones, no sat phones, nothing. So for 10 days, it's going to be whatever happens, happens. If you break a leg, too bad. 10 days later, maybe the plane will come back up looking for you, or 12, 15 days, whenever they think you're overdue. So anyway, so they get dumped off. They get in their canoe, load all their gear in the canoe, and shove out in the river. And he says, I have never been so shocked at the speed that this river runs. So they're just flying down the river. Now they have 10 days. There's no turning back. The plane's gone. And they're going to have to do this trip. So he told me all sorts of things. Like at one point they caught in a whirlpool that lasted several minutes, and they're digging as hard as they can to get out of it, and it just keeps sucking them around. He said it was violent, and all of a sudden, after several minutes, somehow it did pop out of the whirlpool. And he had all these things. They went over a beaver dam, over a waterfall with this aluminum canoe. One place had a 5-mile canyon, not one shore in the canyon. They had to go down this 5-mile canyon of just like Hell's Gate type river. And, that's on the Fraser River. So anyways, so they're whipping down. So they enter this canyon, and you got 5 miles. I mean, whatever happens, happens. And he said, and this is just a super fast and just violent rapids and everything, and they're whipping down this thing. But then the wind started to come up this narrow canyon so strong that they, at points in this rapid river, they couldn't even go forward. So they got this wind coming up, and then sand was falling off the sides of these cliffs, and it was sandblasting the aluminum. It was just like, he said, it was just like a sandblast hitting the aluminum canoe and hitting them. So anyways, they survived, okay? That's the good news. That's why I got the notes. Anyhow, but I looked at that once, and I thought, that's like life. There's a metaphor in it, and there's a whole lot of other details that are just like hair-raising. But it's like a metaphor in life. And what is that metaphor? It's time. We've all been given a certain amount of time in life. We don't know when it's going to end. We don't know if we're going to have, we've got family, not family, but good family type friends that have a little child that's terminally ill in Australia, going through a real battle right now, 5 years old. And so we don't know what the outcome of that's going to be. But the point is we all have a certain amount of time in life. But what is time? It's important to understand what it is. How does it work? Well, there's definitions, and I looked it up here. And it's hard to even fathom it, but it says that the measured or measurable period during which an action, a process, or a condition exists or continues. So in other words, it marks something that's going on, and it's the duration of that. But, in reality, that's just a bit too over the top for me. I'm not the intelligent type, D student all the way through high school, and not much better in college. But the point is, so for me, time is basically just the elapsing of life. You know what elapsed time means? It's just passes. All time is the elapsing of life. Oh, yeah, you can look at it. Oh, yeah, light years and all this, fancy scientific talk about what time is. But in reality, all it is just life elapsing. It just goes away. So where does the river come into it? Well, I got to thinking about one day, and I thought, Well, a river is this way. You enter the river in a canoe or whatever, that's life. You get on this river. And the river is time. It's whipping you down, but then there's all these other things around it. The shores are life. I mean, the shores going by are what your experiences, their experiences in life. And then what you go through while time is just forcing you down. You can't go backwards. Once you enter the river, you can't go. There are rules. You can't go backwards. You can't redo anything. And so as you're whipping down this river, and it's sort of like this. Nobody's river is absolutely dead calm. We wished it were. But we go through rapids, we go through horrible stuff. Time just keeps pushing. We go through all these horrible, and once in a while you have a calm. And it's just like, oh, thank you, Jesus, sort of a thing. And even though we're going through rapids, Jesus is still there, is the good news. But the point is we're whipping down this river and all these things are happening. Now, when you look at what a movie is, and I'm probably going to get myself derailed here, so remember where I left. She's writing. But a number of years ago, during my time of absolute drivenness, if there's such a word as that, I just had to create art, music. I couldn't walk around the house like a cat on a tin roof, and it would just drive her nuts. Go to your music room, it's just driving me nuts. So, and here's the thing is the more I accomplished in music and art and all the different things I did, writing and stuff, the more empty I got. So I'm always looking for that next thing that's going to really make me happy. And since I had done some paintings for Hollywood celebrities and stuff, I had access to that, and I thought, I should write a screenplay for a movie. But you just don't go write a screenplay for a movie. I bought every book you can get your hands on. Rather than going to school or a class or whatever, I just bought everything and get my hands on. How you write scripts. Well, here's the way every movie works. It's just 3-minute segments of crisis and conflict. So if you watch any movie, it's not like one great big long monologue. No, it's just, critically look at it. It's just a little 3-minute segment of a conflict and another 3-minute segment after that of a crisis. And the whole idea is you beat the protagonist, the good guy. You beat him up, beat him up, beat him up. And it just finally gets to the point near the climax of the movie where it's like, there is no hope for the protagonist, the good guy. And then something happens, and a good ending is something good happens, and a bad ending, something bad happens, but it's led you on this journey of watching them go through this conflict and crisis. Well, that's just the way it is. So on a river, if we had a scene of a river, what would we do? How would we write that movie? We would dump somebody out in a canoe on a wild river, the Nahanni. Time is just, you're just whipping down, and it's one rapid after another. Oh, he's not going to make it. Oh, we just made it. Oh, there's another one coming. And then we create some suspense. We hear a waterfall somewhere, but we can't get out of the canoe. So that's suspense, because the rest of us, the listening, the viewers, know what could happen, but we don't want the protagonist to know, and that's where suspense happens. It's like putting a bomb under a couch. We all see it. But the good guy comes in and sits on the couch, and we all know there's a bomb under there. That's suspense. So what happens is we get on this river of life. Time just pushing. And first bad thing comes along and you lose your paddle. That's conflict and crisis. And then along comes something else, and there goes your food. Just went overboard and you can't get it. And all these things happen. And then your canoe gets a big hole in it, and so now you're bailing the whole way down life. Life's like a movie. Time is like the river. It just drives you, pushes you, drives you, pushes you. And the reason I'm a little bit more aware of it now, I turned 70 this last year. Yeah, shocking, isn't it? I heard, you got to be kidding. I hope he makes it through the sermon and doesn't collapse. But anyways, so when you hit 70, I'm not worried about life, but at the same time, you do a little more reflection. You figure, how did it happen so quick? It's just, and here I am. I remember when I was in high school and they'd have alumni, and you'd see these people 40 years old coming back, and you figure, oh man, they're on the edge of death. Because that's what you look at there. But now all of a sudden, boom, you blow by the 40s, you blow 50s, 60s, now 70. And you look back on your life, and lots of regret. I've got a lot of regret in my life. But the topic I wanted to get in here more today is time. What about time? Like I said, time is one of those tricky things. It just pushes you through. You can't go back and relive any part of your life. You can't slow it down. You can't speed it up. You can't do anything with it. And so it can be a ball and chain to you because it's passing you by so fast, and then you begin to get this, not just regret, you just feel like it's a sense of irrelevance, like your life is irrelevant. It's like for men and women too, yes, so it's both. Midlife crisis, have you ever heard of that? Yeah, that's where you wake up one day, and in your mind, your expectation was, by the time I'm 40, I'm going to be a millionaire. I told my wife when we were dating, I said, I'm going to be a millionaire in 5 years. So when it didn't happen, she starts rubbing in my face. But I'm not going to be beat up too bad, so I just says, what I failed to estimate, what I underestimated is the cost of having a woman. Now, don't kick me off. It's a joke, okay? Anyhow, so where was I? I derailed myself on that one. Well, okay, so rabbit hole. I'm on a rabbit trace. There's, right, okay, let's just regroup. You can't relive any part of your life. And so the thing is you have this regret. That's where I left off. You have this sense of irrelevance. Your life just isn't meaningless. And then you have a midlife crisis. And that's where you wake up one day and your expectation was your life is going to be incredible at this point. But you look back and you say it wasn't. Oh, Paul, you nailed it. So you have two options. Buy a Corvette and dump your spouse. Or try to regroup and figure it out. I had a midlife crisis at 38. Mine was both spiritual as well as emotional and everything else. At 38, I'm looking back and I'd accomplished way more than I ever dreamed of accomplishing, but all that accomplished meant nothing. That was the sad part of it. I just thought if I get this goal, I meet that goal, I do here, I get to this level, I make this much money, I do whatever, I'm going to be satisfied. I was not satisfied. And so at 38, I had a midlife crisis. Now, I didn't dump my wife, as you can see, she's still here. And I didn't I already had the Corvette when I met her. Sorry. But the Ferrari, okay? I didn't buy the Ferrari. So you regroup, the midlife crisis. That all relates to time passing you by and you reflecting on what you've done or have accomplished. And this much I can tell you, is you're never going to have a sense of relevance. You're never going to feel content. You're never going to have any sense that life is relevant unless you start to use it for something outside of yourself. That is the only thing that you can bank. We know biblically you can bank things in heaven, right? Okay? But I'm not even talking about heaven. You do something nice for someone, what feeling do you get out of that? It's a big hit in your sense of, I don't know if it's endorphins or what, I'm not a physiologist, but whatever. You feel really good about doing something good. And you can reflect back on that and you can feel, that was worth doing. I'm glad I did. You do something selfish, how long does that last? It doesn't even last for the duration of what you're doing. And then you're left empty. And so the ball and chain of this whole time thing is that it's just going to pass you by no matter what you do. You can't slow it down. You can't speed it up. It's just going to keep ripping you down through that river, and all your life is just passing by on the shores. You can't stop and say, oh, I'd like to hang out here a little bit. Oh, this calm spot, I'd like to spend a little more time there. No, it just keeps going. And so the thing is how do we deal with this? That's the main thing. How do we deal with this dilemma we have as human beings, where all time is just the elapsing of life itself, because we burn up? Well, there's a couple things we can do. Number one, we already know that if you do nice things for others, there's going to be a reward found in that. And if you can look back and see that your life was filled with helping other people and you got those highlights, you can go to your grave contented. But if it's all been about self and the irrelevance of chasing things and position and success, it's going to give you nothing. You got nothing to look back on. I have a neighbor, we have a piece of property on 8 acres over on the Trans-Canada Highway, and the guy across the street's a big mushroom farmer. They're from Vietnam. Huge. Like, he's the biggest producer of mushrooms in, not the magic type, okay, but legitimate mushrooms. Well, we don't know. He's got a lot of money. But anyhow, so certainly in Western Canada, he's the biggest. He's got 5 of these farms. But where he's at, there's a huge composting farm. There's all this stuff. So I've got to know the guy a bit through the years. And his wife is really nice, was really nice. Hugh, her name was. And so she'd always pop over when I'm over at my shop over on this property, and she'd say, oh, why you not come get mushrooms? This is what she's always saying to me. And I says, well, I don't want to bother you. No. So she goes back in her nice BMW car, brings me back 5 pounds. 5-pound box of mushrooms is like huge because they're so light. And I said, no, just give me like a quarter of that. No, you take these. So for years, she's always been bringing mushrooms and all our neighbors. Then we got to go, and you want some mushrooms, you want some mushrooms, you want some mushrooms. And all kinds, the big ones like that, portobellas, and the little ones. In fact, we just got some a couple of weeks ago. Anyways, so I know the husband and the wife quite well. Well, then all of a sudden, she got really sick. And only lasted about 2 months. She passed away. And how do you deal, and they're Buddhists. And how do you deal with people, I don't know what's going to be, on their mind that I could do to encourage them. So I phoned Tan, his name is Tan. I phoned him up one day. And I said, like 2 weeks after his wife passed away, I phoned up, I said, Tan, I am so sorry about what happened to Hugh. And I said, but all I can do for comfort is, would you mind if I prayed with you? And he says, you would pray with me? And I says, absolutely. He says, oh, I would love that. And then for a period of time after that, I became a prayer warrior for him. I would phone him up occasionally and pray on the phone, and he would just melt. I'm a Christian, he's a Buddhist, but he understands that I'm calling down a power that's above us all. But the thing is to be involved in something like that and be able to help somebody else on their journey where time is just burning up, his wife's already, her time's up, is something so rewarding. But then we have to look at, okay, so we have all these little opportunities to do wonderful things with our time. Because here's the thing, I want to back up one thing about assets in life. You know what a stewardship talk is? Carol just about got into it at the beginning there, but no. It's offerings, right? Stewardship. So you get into, so stewardship talks are drive. We need money, money. We always need money. And that's cool. We do need money to run church budgets, and we need money for everything. And that's just totally natural. But guess what we fail to overlook sometimes? We fail to overlook the fact that that's just one tiny asset out of everything God has given us. And the expectation is to tithe on all our different assets. So what are some of our assets? You know what your number one asset is in life? Time. There is no greater asset. Because here's what's interesting, time. You can use time to make money. You can use time to create talent. You can use time to create health. Now that sounds like a far stretch, but no, if you take your time and you exercise, you have times of relaxation and everything else, you can actually increase your health using time. But here's what's interesting, you can't reverse that at all. You can never use your money to buy time. Otherwise, Steve Jobs would have given up his $8.2 billion he died with, given up and mortgaged everything else he had to try to buy a bit more time. Steve Jobs, the guy who's the head of the Apple, started Apple computers and all that. So, and you can't use talent and buy back time. You can't use your health to buy back time. To show you how insane society is, somebody, I can't even remember who it was, and I heard somebody say this one time. They said, here's how ridiculous life is. We spend our whole life expending our health in exchange for money. And then when we retire, we take our money and hopefully buy back our health. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But okay, so when it comes to stewardship, we have time as number one. The second most important thing that we basically have is talent or gifts that God gives us. That's an asset. And then the next thing we have is time, talent, health, or energy. Health or energy. Because it's one thing if you have, my grandfather, when I used to tune pianos with him back in 1977, he had a stroke. And so for the next 7 years, he couldn't move his leg, he couldn't talk, he couldn't do anything. And he was a Bible studier, and he'd have all of us read scripture for him and stuff. But you know, when you see someone who's had that vitality of health and all that taken away, it's really discouraging. But it's an asset. If you do have health or you have energy, to do things, it's an asset. And then after that comes money. So we have time, talent, health and energy, and money. Which of those do you think God needs most if you're going to tithe it? Time. Absolutely, time. Well, how would you tithe time? You spend a portion, if you want to do it 10%, it's kind of hard to take 24 hours because you're sleeping a lot of that time. But whatever your waking hours is, what would it be like to spend an hour or 2 hours a day in Bible study, seeking God, and then going out impacting people's lives? What would that do for your life? Huge. So you have time, then you have talent. Okay, God has given everybody. You say, oh, I don't have any talent. No, the seed is there. You may not have taken the time to develop it. Everybody has been giving gifts of some sort. But if you don't develop those and you don't use them and you don't tithe them, I figured this out years and years ago. So my own art, doing it commercially, illustrating for companies like Gage Publishing in Toronto, Canada's largest publisher, and different things like that. So I'm doing art, but then I thought, okay, so I tithe the money I make on the art. Yeah, okay, that's okay. But what if I tithe my art? Well, how would you tithe your art? Well, what I decided to do is when somebody comes along, like Walter Weiss, wanted me to illustrate his first 2 books. Well, when I found out that it's a ministry and it's not for money, I said, okay, I'll do all the illustrations for free. Tithe it. Somebody else comes along with a book. Okay, if this is total ministry, free. So you just give it back. Ministry Magazine comes along and says, can you illustrate a cover? Fine, free. Oh, no, but we have to pay you. No, sorry, that's my means of giving back. And then when it comes to, so that's talent, tithing it. Time is spending time seeking Jesus, spending time impacting other people's life with love. And then talent, yes, you use that talent for God's glory. And guess what? You won't believe it. How he then begins to bless the commercial part of your talent. That's when it took off for me, is when I started tithing the talent directly rather than the money from the talent. Then you look at your health and energy. You start giving that away. It just seems kind of interesting. Honor your father and your mother that your days may be long. There is something about God blessing with your longevity. And when you think about it, if you're serving God to the fullest of your time, talent at a minimum, it kind of seems logical to conclude that God says, I need that person. I need you. I need you around for a bit longer so that we can impact more people as Jesus walks the streets of gold wearing the pavement out, because we're not actively listening to his still small voice to touch people's lives. So to show the futility of all, to stick with the metaphor, there's a text in Ecclesiastes, which I read occasionally. And what is the book Ecclesiastes? It's Solomon's book, the wisest man who ever lived. They named the book wrong. Sorry about that. They had it all wrong. It should have been called Solomon's Book of Midlife Crisis. It's the perfect book on midlife crisis because it discusses everything to do with midlife crisis. So here in Ecclesiastes 1, verse 7, all the rivers run in, and before that's even good, but anyways, verse 7, all the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. What does that mean? It means rivers, time, they keep running. And they don't run out. Why? Because they evaporate out and they go back and start all over again. So time keeps moving. We have this circle of life. You think of the dynamic leaders in history. They're there and we get to read about them. Wow, they did some amazing things, but guess what? They die. And then there's another crop of leaders come up and we read the history about them and they're amazing. Wow, but no, they die. And then another crop. It's just this circle of life. It just keeps going and going. And it is horrible if you don't have an understanding of what's at the other end of it. So this text here is a text of futility. It just keeps going. It just keeps going. Evaporates, comes back, keep going. And the next generation get on the same time river. And they might have a slightly different scene. You can't relive any part of it. You get a fork in the road, which our lives are full of forks in the road. You say, oh, left, right. Well, I don't have any time because it's just pushing. So you say, oh, I'm going right. Then you run into horrible situations in life. Oh, I'd like to go back and take the left fork in the river. And then you come to another fork because life is full of decisions. And because time keeps pushing, you can't idle around and stop and think about it. You're forced to make the decision and go. But if you're doing all your decisions on your own power without consulting with a higher power, the whole thing is going to be a ball and chain to you. It's going to drag you down. It's going to hold you back. Time's going to pass you by, and then one day, maybe you're on your last leg. Well, one day you're going to be sitting there and you're going to be thinking back, what did I accomplish? But here's the good news. When does God give up on drafting new plans for your life? When? He never does. This hit me one time, totally random. And I think I shared that here once before, a long time ago. I was asked to go speak at a place called Valdosta, Georgia. So I don't know where it is. I know it's in Georgia, that much I know, but I don't know where Valdosta is. So I had it in my schedule, so I said, okay, I'll go. So I put it down the schedule. And I'm assuming it's a big church down in Georgia somewhere. I don't know. And so time gets closer, so I have to buy my ticket. So I look it up on the map. Oh, man, that's just a podunk little town in South Georgia. Man, like how do I get there? I can't fly to it. So I had to fly down into Florida to Jacksonville, Florida. That's the closest big airport, even closer than Atlanta, Georgia, further north. So I book all my tickets, the whole 9 yards. I have to rent a car down there in Jacksonville, Florida to drive up to this Valdosta. And I did find out that from the guy who booked me that I'm staying with the pastor and his wife. Yeah, okay, cool. That'll be good. So I get my tickets the whole 9 yards. I fly down to Jacksonville on a Friday because I have to start speaking Friday night for the whole weekend. So I go down there, get my car rental, and it's a miserable drive north. And so I a few hours drive up north into this Valdosta. I get there, and it's this dinky little town. I go to the church, and this little old country church, and nobody's there 15 minutes before we start. And I've just been through a horrific trip. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Did I get this mixed up or what? And it's this little country church, and you know what? And by then it's dark and all misty from high humidity, and there's, fireflies flying all over outside. My only entertainment for that trip was watching fireflies. And about 5-10 minutes before we're supposed to start, I actually got there earlier than that, but anyways, I hear a car gravel behind me, so I look, a car comes in. And then another car, 12 people show up. And I'm thinking, I went through this and so I walk in, nothing wrong with gray hair. I've got gray hair now too, so I can intelligently talk about this. But everybody in there was gray-haired to the furthest extent of gray hair. So I'm thinking, what am I going to talk about? So I got a few minutes to figure out where I'm going. Anyways, make a long story short, I speak Friday night. They're appreciative. I spoke Saturday morning, and interestingly, one guy in there, a 4-star general from the U.S. Air Force, was in the audience because his wife made him come, and he's wearing sunglasses. He's sitting second row in the front here. And I'm thinking, is he asleep? He doesn't, I walk over here, he's looking straight, and I'm thinking, this poor guy's obviously been driven to come to this thing, and he's not enjoying any of it. And so I don't have a clue if he's listening or if he's asleep. But the cool thing happened. By afternoon, this guy was totally alive and introduced me some really cool water purification stuff, because I do humanitarian things like well drilling kits and all that. Anyways, so that all worked out really cool. And yes, he must have been listening. But come Saturday night, and I got to fly out, I have to start driving at 2 a.m. Saturday night to get back down to my 6 o'clock flight down in Jacksonville, Florida. So I'm like, oh man. So I speak Saturday evening, and then the pastor couldn't be there all day because he had other churches. He had like 4 churches. So he comes over for the last meeting, and he says, after it's done, he says, oh, you got to come to another one of my churches. And I'm thinking, no, I'm done traveling to Valdosta, Georgia. And he says, oh no, man, you've got to come to my other church. And I says, well, like when? He says, well, now. Well, it's 8 o'clock at night. And I'm needing to get some sleep so I can drive at 2 a.m. And so anyways, make a long story short, he convinces me that I got to go. We drive 50 miles north of where he is. So now I'm going the wrong direction from where I really want to go down south. And I'm thinking, how stupid is it? And I am really tweaked about the whole thing. So we're just beating it along. It's dark. And we finally get up to this other little church, same size as the other one. And another 12 people show up. All gray hairs, which I am, okay? Sorry, I can say it. But anyhow, so I'm again thinking, what do I say to these people? So I prayed on the Holy Spirit really hard, because I figure I can't go, rah, let's get out there and finish the work, I mean, not that they couldn't, but it's sort of in my mind. So I'm praying down the Holy Spirit really heavy, which is what I do before I preach. And so I'm praying down the Holy Spirit, figure, where do I go? And they said, all of a sudden, something came. Never thought about it before. It just happened. Holy Spirit did it. I talked about the story of Joseph a little bit. I talked about that. But then I talked about how in heaven, God has, because I said I'm an engineer, and when I design and build machines, I do CAD drawings, computer-assisted drawing. I do CAD drawings of everything I'm going to design, everything that I'm going to build. So I do all the drawings of the machinery and all the pieces. So when we take it down to my plant, you cut this piece, that piece, you weld it all together, and then you paint it all, and you put the motors and everything on, and now you got a machine or a plant or whatever it is. So I'm telling them, that's what I do. But I said, in heaven, Jesus is there drafting plans for your life. Magnificent plans. And I said, which when I say I said, the Holy Spirit said, because I'm listening to the story as it's coming out. And so I said, so Jesus is there, and at the beginning of your life, no, before the beginning of your life, from the foundation of the earth, but a little later on from your mother's womb, Jesus has already drafted a plan, a magnificent plan for your life. He's got it all planned out. And then you're born. And then, of course, we have to mature a little bit and stuff. We have to get to the decisional point of life. And I said, then along comes Herb. Here's his plan in heaven, magnificent. But I'm more interested in success in life, so I'm going to hit it hard. And so I get out, finish high school, go to college, whatever, get it all done, get out there, hit life. Meanwhile, here's the plan. But what's happening? Time is slipping. Time keeps on slipping. You ever heard that song? Yeah, it just keeps slipping. So time goes. And now that plan in heaven on the drafting board in front of Jesus can't happen. Why? Because I've burned up a big chunk of time already on myself. So what does Jesus say? Oh, man, I wish we could have got through to his thick head. We'll just have to roll it up and throw it away, I guess. In the garbage it goes. Well, that might happen, but guess what? He goes right back, brand new sheet of paper. What has Herb got left in his life? He knows, I don't. Drafts a brand new, magnificent plan for the rest of my life. And I haven't quite made enough money yet in life, so I'm going to work a little bit longer, a little bit harder. And then when it's all done, maybe I'll do some nice things for people. So drive. Can't do this anymore. Garbage, another piece of paper. And I got all these old people here in the audience. And I said, here's the amazing thing. You don't know it, but God does know how much time you have left. You know how merciful and how graceful Jesus is? If you only have one day left, what has he done? Put a brand new sheet of paper on that drafting board, and he's come up with something brand new for your life with the last day you have. That's the grace of Jesus. And I had all these little old people, little old ladies coming up. Can I give you a hug? Of course, I'm not the hugging type that my wife is teaching me. But anyways, shedding tears on my shirt. Because they said we never thought, it wasn't me, I didn't preach the sermon. But they said we never thought there was anything left for us to do. We look back and, woulda, shoulda, coulda. Ball and chain to the woulda, shoulda, couldas. No, my friends. God has a plan drafted in heaven. Jesus has taken time to draft a beautiful whatever it is. I don't know what the plans are. I don't even know if I want to look when I get to heaven in the garbage can and say, what did you have for me when I was 20? What did you have me for when I was 30? When I had my midlife crisis at 38, what did the plan look like at that point? But then I look at Paul, persecutor of Christians. If anybody should have given up because such a wasted life, time just blew by, he's killing people, persecuting people. No, Jesus drafts a brand new plan. His name is changed from Saul to Paul, and we got one of the most incredible evangelists you could ever read. That's how gracious Jesus is. So what side of the aisle do you want to be on? Because I just quoted a minute ago in Solomon's book of midlife crisis. If you go over to chapter 2, we have the greatest resume in Ecclesiastes 2. We have the greatest resume ever written in history because it's written by the wisest man who ever lived. And it starts out in verse 3. I saw it in my heart. And then we have the list of all the amazing things Solomon did. Unbelievable things, choirs and vineyards and tree groves and all this amazing stuff. And then he gets down here to verse 11 and he says, then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought and on the labor that I had labored to do. And behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. The futility of this river that just keeps going, that we read about in chapter 1 of Ecclesiastes, keeps going, keeps generation after generation, go down the river, they see some things, they experience some things, dead, next one comes along, blah, 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 the circle of life. That's a picture of futility. And now we actually get a story of futility. Oh, and then let's go while we're here in the book of Ecclesiastes. There is a discovery that Solomon made near the end of his book. Chapter 12, verse 13. The last two verses in the book of Midlife Crisis. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. After we hear all this depressing stuff that we're all going through. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God. In other words, have a relationship with him and keep the commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. Amen. The choice is ours. We're on this river that my friend, Nahani, Headless Valley, we're on this river just going through life. What are we going to do? Are we just going to ride it out? Make any decisions for good? And just hope at the end that, somebody can write on our gravestone, oh yeah, he did some nice things. She did some nice things. Or are we going to start making decisions on this thing we can't stop, this time thing, and we're going to decide that The fearing God part, the relationship with Jesus, the spending time, tithing our time in seeking Jesus, tithing our time in touching people's others' lives, will give us enjoyment and fulfillment now and eternity later. Because here's what Satan does with every one of our bad decisions. Remember I said at the beginning, he's the consummate bully, leads you to do something wrong, then turns around and finks on you. Well, that's what he does. We come to a crossroad in the river. Oh, we had hardly time to make it. Go down here. And it was a bad decision. And then what does he do? Ha, sucker. I'm going to put a ball and chain around your ankle. You're not going to have any confidence in your decision making in the future. You're not going to have any sense of relevance. You are a loser. And that's what Satan does to us. He accuses us before God both day and night and puts a ball and chain on our ankle and holds us back from living life the way God planned for us. I think it's Matthew 19. It's an amazing reference that talks about God will give us an abundant life today. Let me just look it up quick. I may not have exactly right one, but anyways, it's amazing because there's two things we get out of following God and out of making good decisions. And it's important that we look at that. Sorry, I should have wrapped it up, but another rabbit chase. Yes, it is Matthew 19. Verse 29. This is all about decisions, this text. And everyone that hath forsaken houses, or brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands for my name's sake, shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit everlasting life. Now here's what I like about this. When do we get the 100-fold? Now or later? It's now. Because how can heaven only be 100 times better than earth? From that perspective. 100 times sounds amazing. And if somebody said, you invest in this stock, you're going to make 100 times on it. Well, I'd be taking that every day. But God is saying, I'm going to give you 100 times return on investment now, because heaven is gajillion times better than earth. I'll give you 100 times return on investment today. And then it uses the word and. What is that, a compound word? Whatever they call it. It says, and shall inherit everlasting life. What kind of a deal is that where you get a win today and a win in the future? It unlocks the ball and chain. It frees you to live a fulfilling, relevant life. And all Jesus is waiting for is us to make the ultimate decision. He is worth pursuing. He is worth tithing my time, my talent, my energy, and my money. He's worth it. Because I get 100 times return on investment today and eternal life later. That's the decision we're up against.